On the bench today, we've got the brand new Team Corally Kagama4, and if this thing turns out to be as good as I think it's gonna be, this could be the one that convinces you to buy your first Team Corally. Let's dig into it. The Kagama4 is a medium-large 1/10 scale truggy. It's a little bit bigger than something like an Arrma Granite or Big Rock, but a little bit smaller than a Traxxas Maxx and the Arrma Outcast or Kraton 4S. That being said, this thing has features under the hood that none of those cars offer out of the box, and it does it for less money. I think this is one of Team Corally's best looking bodies. It definitely looks better than the 6S Kagama, and overall looks very clean and very tough. Speaking of tough, these bodies are some of the strongest in the industry. They do come with roof skids, and whereas they don't have a complete cage inside, they're very thick, and the way they're designed keeps them from folding up or getting dented too easily. These are among the few bodies I usually don't actually reinforce before using them, and we've got something even more special here. We've still got clips here on the Kagama4, and as you can see, these body posts are very thick. These clips install and remove very, very easily, eliminating one of the advantages of a clipless system. These also don't fall out on their own. Under the body is where things get pretty wild though, because whereas this is a 4S 1/10 scale truck, this is all 1/8 scale underneath. To start off, we do have a G1 Max 10 SCT ESC. This thing's 135 amps, so it's slightly beefed up, and it is programmable with a 7.4 volt BEC. It comes with a nice button holder here that's actually easily accessible from outside. And then this little guy's a nice touch. This is for putting your GNSS GPS in, so you don't have to figure out where to mount it. Not everybody's gonna use that, but it is a really nice touch, especially at the price point. Moving up from that, we have a support tower that interacts with the body so that when you land upside down, your body doesn't get crushed in. And then in front of and behind that, you can see those ultra thick body posts with really beefy body post mounts. I don't think these are gonna be breaking anytime soon. Underneath those posts is a lot of new hardware. We're gonna be taking a closer look at that in a minute, but for now, let's take a look at these tires. These are the same wheels and tires that previously came on the Skeeter, but there's one really nice upgrade. And that upgrade is these heavily serrated wheel nuts. Previously, we didn't get serrated wheel nuts from Team Corally, and it caused a lot of problems with wheel nuts falling off. These tires are nice and thick. The tires themselves are not vented though. I'd really like to see Team Corally start venting their tires because pretty much everybody else is going to that. As you can see, the wheels are vented, and of course these do have foams in them, and they're on 17mm hexes. If you like to see full teardowns of the latest awesome vehicles, make sure you get subscribed. We've got some really cool stuff coming very soon that you're not gonna wanna miss. Suspension on this is very tanky with big hubs in the rear, solid links at the top and in the front, as well as pillow balls in the front. These shocks have a hybrid composite steel upper mount. We do have a nice little shock protector here. These are great for making sure that the top of the shock itself doesn't get damaged. And then this has actually become my favorite style of shock. First of all, the spring perch is positively retained with a quarter turn latch. And then this is a composite body threaded shock. The cap has a composite top, but a metal threaded part. This to me is the best combination for durability. The aluminum threads prevent the cap from popping off, and then the plastic top gives you a little bit of flexibility. I think these are actually better than their all aluminum shocks. We've got some good fluid in here, and this is a bladder style shock. In the past, I've had some people ask what the best way to put these bladder style shocks together is, and in my opinion, you want to put the cap partway on, then take the shock shaft and push it all the way up, and while holding that up, go ahead and put the cap on the rest of the way. And you're looking for a shaft that doesn't try to push out when you compress it all the way. If you feel a lot of resistance as you're pushing the shaft in, that means you haven't left any space in here for that shaft to take up when it compresses, and you're going to end up putting a ton of pressure inside this shock body, which could cause it to leak. Behind that shock are where things get really interesting on this car, and this thing's built like no other car available. We do have composite shock towers, but these things are super thick and they integrate all the way back into the bulkhead. They've also got aluminum reinforcement where the upper pins go through, and this makes for a very, very tough setup. Popping these body posts off, you can see just how big they are. This is a normal Arrma body post, and you can see just how much tankier these Kagama4 posts are. These are gonna be really tough. And then from there, we can pull this shock tower off. And again, you can see just how thick this is and how it integrates back into the upper bulkhead. And then under that, you can see that nice aluminum pin mount. With that off, we get a good look at this upper arm. It looks pretty durable, but we're gonna have to see how it holds up to some bashing. To remove the front differential, we're gonna have to take this front skid plate off, which also integrates a front bumper. We have a nice aluminum chassis down here, as well as a big skid plate in the rear, which should help protect things. Taking this off, we come to our first real head scratcher of the design, and that's this rear screw. This thing's held in with a nut on the other side, which is almost impossible to get to. I'm not really sure why it doesn't just screw straight into the chassis. Fortunately, this has enough flex that it can just be moved out of the way, so it doesn't really matter. We can see here that the A block is nice machined aluminum. The D block is the same way, but the B and C blocks are actually just composite because most of the impacts you're going to get are from the front and from the rear. It's very rare you're going to get a really bad hit from inside the wheel like this, so these inner blocks don't need to be nearly as strong. It is really nice to see what appears to be machined parts on a budget truck like this. Most companies would just use stamped aluminum or just plastic. With that off there, we get a good look at these hinge pins. They do appear to be nice, high quality pins. Again though, we'll see if they bend when we bash them, especially with some bigger tires. One really interesting thing I just noticed is that the spring retainers for these CVDs are a different style than we've previously seen. Normally there's a spiral clip on here, and this is just a solid piece of metal. It makes me wonder if they've gone to a different manufacturer for these CVDs. Some people have complained about breaking these, and maybe they've made them stronger. Again though, there's only one way we're going to be able to find out. And that is an all-steel differential. This thing's got a steel ring gear, a steel pinion gear, steel outputs, and steel internal gears, and it's sealed. Let's take a look inside. One thing I wanted to mention is that Team Corally offers a bunch of upgrades for these vehicles. This Kagama4 is on the same platform as a lot of their other vehicles, which means that some of the stock parts from those vehicles, like differentials and whatnot, will be upgrades for this, and they also make bespoke upgrades that are really, really nice. Inside here, we've got all steel gears again, and we've got a nice fluid-filled differential with a decent amount of fluid in it. Taking a closer look at this ring gear, you can see that this is a sintered steel ring gear, but again, for a 4S 1/10 scale truck, that's pretty good. And getting this differential back together, the action feels nice and smooth. We do have aluminum plates connecting the non-adjustable steering links to the pillow ball hub. Personally, I don't mind non-adjustable steering links on bashers. They can be very strong, and these are very strong, and most people never adjust them on bashers anyway. The only place I really want to see adjustable links are in cars that are being advertised as race cars. As you may or may not know, this is based on the Syncro 4 4S buggy. One place where it's upgraded is the steering. This has a double steering plate system, whereas the buggy only has a single plate. And then to wrap up this front suspension, we'll pop this hex off. This does use a standard size hex with a standard size pin, so upgrading these to wider hexes if you want to do that should be pretty easy. Underneath that, we do have sealed bearings. I expect to see sealed bearings throughout this entire car, which is great to see on a budget truck like this. I'm going to put all this back together, then let's take a look at what really sets this truck apart from the other competition. The main thing that sets this truck apart from other 4S trucks in this price range is its drivetrain, and nowhere is that more evident than right here in the middle. Underneath this chunky two-piece tower-to-tower brace, we've got a very classic 6S style motor mount and center differential. This brace is unique to the Kagama4, and whereas it's plastic, it feels very, very sturdy and should definitely help keep that chassis in line. This Curon 725 is a big, beefy motor, and it's actually 2150 kV, which means it should take 5 and even 6S without any trouble. Underneath the cover, you can see we've got machined Mod 1 gears. And then underneath here, we've got a very classic looking center diff with a machined spur gear. This motor mount, however, is very different from the Syncro 4. As you can see here, whereas it has the same 3 holes that allow for 13, 15, and 17 tooth pinions, the stock one's a 13, and I suspect that's gonna be under-geared. This is all aluminum instead of being plastic like it is on the Syncro. The center differential is plastic cased, but nice and beefy though. The fluid in it feels pretty thin. Let's put something a little more thick in there. Now this may be controversial, and I know some of you won't want to do this, but I like to do stunts and tricks, so I'm going to add a little bit of 20 million in with the fluid that's already in there. They will mix together just fine and give me something in between the two of them. Obviously, this is going to make the front wheels want to come off the ground more easily, which is great for doing wheelies and stunts, but it's also going to make the front of the wheels want to come off the ground more easily, which is going to make it harder to turn under acceleration. What's your preferred center differential fluid thickness and why? Let me know down in the comments. I'm really curious to see what everybody else is running. There we go. It's not like it's locked up, but it should make wheelies a little bit easier. Like I said, another thing we may need to upgrade is this pinion. It was under-geared in the Syncro. However, these tires are larger, which will give us a lower effective overall gear ratio, so it might be okay, but if not, we've got a bigger gear on standby. Center drive shafts are, as you would expect, nice and beefy. Another place the Team Corally trucks really shine is the steering. This is a full steel 7.4 volt compatible servo, and it's something you don't usually have to replace right away. Let's check it out. This aluminum servo horn is quality. I've never had to replace one. And this receiver box, while not waterproof, is pretty spacious and makes it very easy to keep your wires organized. We've got the same CT2S transmitter that we saw in the Syncro 4. It does have speed limiting, as well as basic adjustments and a foam knob. It feels Okay. Pulling the servo out, you can see it is aluminum bodied. It does not have O-rings on the screws, nor does it have a gasket on the bottom, but I've had a bunch of these servos and they generally are fairly water resistant. I don't think I've ever killed one because of water, though it would be nice to see gaskets or at least some conformal coating on the board. As you can see, we have a brushed motor here. Nice thing about the aluminum case is it helps sink heat away from that brushed motor. And then popping the top, we can see we've got all steel gears here, a ball bearing here at the top, and then a bushing for the second axle shaft, but plastic for the first axle shaft. Overall, this is a very decent servo. I've run quite a few of these, and whereas they're not the fastest thing in the world, once you bump them up to 7.4 volts, they are perfectly competent, and unlike on some other brands, this isn't a servo you're going to want to replace right away. We're going to be powering this through an XT90 connector. It is AMAS branded, and this is a nice adjustable battery box. They did fairly recently strengthen this box, but I have broken them as well as these straps pretty often, so we'll see if they survive this time. Speaking of things that break, I've broken just about every wing on my Team Corally cars. I'm curious to see if this mount and this wing can survive just a little bit longer. Speaking of which, I'm gonna get all this put back together. Let's go see how this thing performs. All right, bone stock for us. Let's see what she can do. It's not very fast. Full throttle. Let's give it one more. Okay, 35 miles an hour felt pretty decent, and it's definitely very stable, but I think we can do better. One downside to this type of motor mount is that we're gonna have to take the whole thing back apart in order to swap out this gear because we can't get to the screws to adjust the holes. Honestly, I find it a little bit confusing that they use such a small pinion gear with a 2150 kV motor. I'm not sure if they're intentionally trying to make these slower than their 6S trucks, but we can definitely do better. Because I am planning on going higher voltage here shortly, we're just going to put a 15-tooth pinion on here. Based on what I felt, you could probably go straight to 17 if you're planning on sticking to 4S. I'm just going to stab this all back together and let's go see if it's any faster. Okay, 15-tooth gear, let's see what she can do now. That's a lot more pep. Here we go. Full throttle. That feels good. One more pass. Full throttle. Yeah, it feels good. All right, let's see what that was. 47 miles an hour. Now we're talking. Let's see how that 15-tooth bashes. Okay guys, stock 4S, this thing's absolutely awesome. It handles really, really well, has plenty of power with that 15-tooth pinion. I'm really not sure why they go with a stock 13-tooth pinion on here. It really needs to be 15 teeth. And so far, everything's holding up just fine. Even with the 15-tooth pinion and some pretty heavy bashing, the motor stayed nice and cool. But now we're really gonna put it to the test with 6S. An ESC swap on here isn't as simple as on some cars because the wiring for the ESC actually goes down through the battery tray. It's not terrible, but it is a little bit more involved. You can get away without removing the receiver box, but taking it out makes things a lot easier. Once you get those things unscrewed, the wiring is actually fairly easy to get to and well routed, though you might need an extension for your ESC if you're gonna upgrade this. The stock ESC has a cable that's a little bit longer than normal. I'm pretty sure this Castle Cobra 10 is going to be long enough though. And then coming over here, we can just pull this box out of here, which makes getting to this wiring really straightforward. You can do this without pulling this box out, but it's not easy. The Cobra 10 fits perfectly in the stock location, though I am gonna have to double side tape it down. Let me do that and get this wiring tidied up. Okay guys, she's all installed. I'm gonna leave these stock tires on here because I wanna see just what they can handle. To that point, let's drop this big, beautiful 6S battery in here and see what breaks. Based on the performance of the Synchro 4, I suspected this, but the new Kagama 4 is the standard by which all 4S budget bashers are going to be judged. This thing's cheaper than basically all of its competition. It handles absolutely fantastically right out of the box. The shocks are tuned perfectly for general bashing and jumping. This platform is an absolute tank. This is basically a 6S platform that they're running 4S on, and I proved that by running 6S on it and nothing broke. I don't necessarily recommend running 6S on it, but it can handle it. It can also handle high speed, rough terrain, and big air right out of the box. Obviously, you're gonna wanna go up a size or two on that pinion because it's pretty slow out of the box, but that's a cheap and easy upgrade. And if you want more power, 6S or even 5S is easily in reach. You can break the wing on this thing, which I'm surprised about. It's pretty flexible. I think they're making it out of some new material, and it works really, really well. These tires, while not perfect, are great for all-around bashing. They don't balloon too much, but they do balloon enough to give you air control if you've got enough power. Overall, this is it, guys. This is now the 4S large 10th scale basher to beat. Parts availability isn't a problem as long as you don't mind getting your parts online. You can get them from RC Hobby Explosion or straight from the mothership in Europe with $10 shipping. That usually takes 2 to 4 days. Upgrades, especially for these lower end models, are also no problem. You can just go to Jenny's, buy the differentials off the 6S Kagama, and you're upgrading. M2C's making upgrades for these cars now. You can buy upgrades from ADU Racing. The warranty you get from Team Corally is very good. You can also get support from Hobby Recreation Products. They are the main supplier here in the United States. And overall, guys, I really can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to buy this car. I also can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to subscribe to the channel and then watch this video.